Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who are making the world better, locally, globally, and digitally. We believe that these stories of people who look at the world and find innovative and important ways to address needs that are out there are themselves important for our understanding what we can do. There's a joy and meaning that comes from serving others. We believe that in Rotary, the 1.2 million Rotarians in 36,000 clubs around the world. And we feel that these stories need to be shared. So we hope that this will be one that inspires you and that you will share. In the inspiration space, our speaker today is Rob Scheer. Rob is part of an organization, the founder of an organization called Comfort Cases. He's got an important story to tell about an aspect of our community that may not always kind of be obvious to folks living their lives, but should be. And so we're excited to have him. Rob, welcome. We are excited to have you. I hand the mic over to you.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, and I want to say thank you to the Rotary Club. The fact is when we actually started our nonprofit Comfort Cases 13 years ago, we actually were the Rotary Club was the very first to give us a check to for us to pack our very first case. The fact is that my story probably doesn't start like many of yours. I'm actually the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times. We lived in and out of every shelter. Foster care was something that I heard as a young boy, a word that most of us do not even talk about. But what for me, I kept seeing was my brothers and sisters were falling to the wayside. Teenage pregnancy, incarceration, drug addiction. See, the thing is that in the United States, as of right now, we have roughly about 390,000 children that are in our foster care system. We have one child every 2 minutes who enter foster care. That's 700 kids a day. The sad part is most people don't even realize that when they come into foster care, they're handed this, a trash bag. And I know that firsthand. When I went into foster care at the age of 12, I was given a trash bag. I remember I had about 20 minutes to gather the little bit of stuff that I had because I was going to my new home. I remember as I walked into my new home, expecting to be greeted as if I was wanted to be there. Instead, the only thing they said was he doesn't even have any decent clothes to wear to church in his trash bag. I remember as a young 12-year little boy that moment I felt disposable, invisible, and then I didn't matter. I remember as I walked down the hallway and she put me in the bathroom. For the first time, she said something to me. She said, clean up. She shut the door behind me, and there it was. Actually, the thing that actually changed my life as a young boy. It was a bar of soap that was lying in the bathtub. See, the fact is that kids enter foster care because of choices other people made. And all of a sudden, you put me in a bathroom and you expect me to pick up a bar of soap and lather my body up, and I don't even know what their middle names are. What were their favorite colors? But for me, I wanted it to be different. I wanted to be that kid that you were actually going to love. I would actually wake up in the morning and I'd clean their kitchen before they asked. And by the way, I watched their three biological children because they used to say to me all the time, these are my biological kids. This is our foster kid. As the years went by, even though they never once put a picture of me on the mantle, whenever there was family portraits that were taken, I was never included. Whenever there was a vacation, I was never taken on those vacations. Somewhere within them, they had to have loved me. They allowed me to call them mom. They allowed me to call them dad. And even though they never played ball with me or didn't allow me to have any sports or even have a birthday party, I had a place to sleep until that fall day in 1984. I just turned 18 years old. I was a senior in high school, and I was going to be the very first kid in my family to ever graduate. You know, the fact is that you have to realize that kids in foster care, only 54% of them actually will graduate high school, that only 11% will fill out a college application, and that only 3% will get a 4-year degree. And I was graduating high school, but I walked into that house that fall day, and there it sat, something that I hadn't thought about in a long time, and it was my trash bag. It was filled with my clothes. I remember I looked at my mom and I said, "What is this?" And she said, "You got to go." I said, "What do you mean I got to go?" I was like, "This is my home." I looked at my dad and he said, "No, this is your house. This is our home. And we are no longer receiving a check from the state because you're 18 years old, so you no longer can live here." My friend, that was the saddest day of my life, even sadder than the day that they took me from my parents, because now all of a sudden I was 18 years old and I was homeless. See, 23,000 kids will actually age out of foster care this year. And out of those 23,000 children, 70% of us become homeless within 24 hours. You don't see us on the streets because we're scared. And who do we tell? When we tell people, they put us in reform schools, psychiatric hospitals. They think that we are the problem within the communities when actually, if you all accepted, you made us. You made us. And for me, I just wanted an education. So I took my trash bag, I hid it behind a bush, and I walked into school every single day. I used to wait for the kids to leave the cafeteria so I could gather as much food as I could because I didn't know if I'd eat that night. I'd go into the public library and I would hide in the back corner until they turned the lights out so I would at least be able to sleep somewhere. Or I would find an abandoned building. And every morning I would sneak into school to shower because the kids would make fun of me because of how dirty I was. But I deserved to be there. I deserved to get that education. And sure enough, it happened. That June day of 1985. It was graduation day. I remember I went down to the front desk and I was like, I made it to this far, but I don't have a cap and gown. See, the fact is I didn't have the money to rent a cap and gown. So I'd asked if I could borrow one. And I remember that the lady, she handed me one, and I went into the bathroom and I put it on. I stood in front of that mirror and I said, "Robert, you made it. You did it. When no one else believed in you, you believed in yourself." And then I went and stood in line. And I listened in the auditorium as people were clapping and screaming and calling name after name. And then all of a sudden they called my name. Silence. No one clapped. No one cheered. No one cared. See, the fact is the trash bag that was handed to me in the 70s and then handed to me again in the 80s actually did its job. It made me invisible, disposable, as if I did not matter, that I was one of these throwaway kids. I actually left that auditorium and I went back to the back parking lot and I sat down. I remember I cried. I cried for my mom and dad. I wanted to feel the cigarette that my father used to put out on me so bad because at least if he was burning me, he was there. I cried for my foster parents. How could they give up on me because of a check? And then I cried for all of you, my community who felt that this young little 12-year-old little boy who worked so hard to get to where he was could not even get someone to clap for him. At that moment, I realized what my community had done. See, in our community, we give children in foster care only three choices. That's it. Choice number one, we give up. Suicide rate in foster care is higher than we have ever seen before. Choice number two, we give in. We do exactly what you expect of us. We commit those petty crimes. We fill your detention centers. As we gather here today, 80% of our death row inmates were in foster care. Or choice number three, we give it all we got. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the United States Navy. And by the way, I didn't join the Navy to take care of any of you. I joined the Navy because I was hungry. I wanted a future and I deserved it. And I built it and I made it. And I became a very successful banker. I had mortgage companies all over this country until 16 years ago. See, the fact is the only thing I ever wanted in my life was to be a dad, to be a dad. And when it was time to be parents, my husband and I decided to adopt out of foster care. And lo and behold, my first two children arrived at the age of 2 and 4. And I remember when they were standing at the front door with the social worker, both of them had this, a trash bag. I thought to myself, how could this be? How can we be a country that say we care so much about our children and we're giving them trash bags? But for me, it was about being a dad. And by the way, I was a dad to one of the most beautiful little girls in the world. And gentlemen, I will explain this to you. If you ever have an opportunity to be a father to a girl, there's no other feeling. Also, gentlemen, the day that you realize that women rule this world is going to be so much better because my daughter rules my world. But she was so sad. She wouldn't smile. And I remember saying to Reese, I'm the happiest I've ever been, but to the saddest little girl. And sure enough, she walked into her new bedroom after getting out of the tub, and there lying on the bed were three nightgowns. She picked one of them up, she tore the tag off of it, and she turned around and she smiled at me. I said, Amaya, why are you smiling? She said, Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new pair of pajamas before. My friends, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable that kids come into foster care because of choices other people made, and we can't even give them a brand new pair of pajamas. But for me, it was about being a dad. Month one, month two, month three, phone rings. Hey, Mr. Scheer, guess what? What? We have two more kids. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I already have two kids. They said, but we have two more. We have a 6 month old and a 2 year old, and they really need a home. And sure enough, within 3 months, we had four kids, four in diapers. But again, they arrived with a trash bag. As the years went by, I started doing things for my children that I realized that I was actually doing a disservice. My children were going to private schools. We filed for adoption. We adopted all four of them. They got passports. And then, as I was sitting in my office right outside DC, I realized that I had done two of the worst things we could do as parents. Number one, I didn't teach my kids their proper legacy. See, your legacy is about what you give and not about what you take. And then I didn't teach my kids empathy. Empathy is not in our DNA. Empathy is taught. And so we decided to take a backpack. We're going to take a backpack and put a brand new pair of pajamas, their own lotion, their own shampoo, their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. I want every child to have their own stuffy. I wanted every child to have their own, book. I wanted every child to have their own activity. But then my son Grayson, he was 5 years old at the time. He's now 18. He said, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every case. I said, a blankie? I said, you do know these kids are not cold, Grayson. He said, I know, Daddy. But every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. My friends, that's what we all want. We want to be loved. We want to know we matter. And so with that, we packed a case and another and another. And in the last 13 years, as a 96% volunteer ran organization, we have packed and delivered over 265,000 cases. We have delivered them to all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And I know I do not need to remind all you smart people, Puerto Rico belongs to us. Yes, it's surrounded by water, but so is Hawaii. You know, the thing that we must understand is why did our forefathers build communities? They did not build it, my friends, for your bushes to match. They did not build it for your zip codes to be different. They built communities for us to take care of each other. And if we are not taking care of our children, then what are we doing? And at this time, my time is about up. But the fact is if you look behind me on the wall, you see my beautiful children. And I actually have five kids now. In 2019, I had sold all my businesses and became a public speaker to go around and educate people about kids in foster care, to understand that the children who are in our foster care system are our future. In 2019, I met my fifth child. He was 18 years old. He came up to me and asked if I would sign his memoir. And I said, Of course. What's your name? He said, Alex. And sure enough, 3 months after meeting my son, Alex, who had been in foster care, he became our forever son. And so now my kids are 16, 18, 18, 20, and 24. Thank you.
Wonderful, Rob. Oh my goodness, what a powerful story. I want to take just a moment, introduce our other member on the recording, and joining us from Eastern Italy is Cecilia Babker. Cecilia, good to see you. We also have David, part of Rob, your team, and that is a pleasure to be able to have this kind of story be something that we share for sure. So, in starting the questions, I wanna leap into uh, first of all the structure of the organization. You talked about it being a 96% volunteer organization. Help us better understand comfort cases as a system.
Sure.
So what is it that is the focus of the time of the volunteers, of the paid staff, things like that?
So the thing is that we are a small but mighty team. We only have about 4 full-time members that are here. We have volunteer hours in our Gaithersburg National Center, 6 days a week, where people come in and pack cases. But we also do packing parties all over the country. So there is an estate that we haven't been in, and by the way, the beautiful state of California, we have given probably close to 50,000 cases to them. So what happens is we have large corporations like American Express, Amazon, Google, that will actually reach out to me and they want to have the experience of their staff packing these backpacks. And by the way, all of our backpacks are different. They're all different colors. We do not brand anything whatsoever. We truly believe that children are not billboards, and that the reason we have all different types of bags is because kids are all different. And so what happens is people will come in and they will actually, pack these cases. Social workers actually can go onto our website, and we are the only organization that does what we do, and we do not charge for our cases. So social workers can go on, they can order cases from birth up to the age of 21. They can choose male or female, and they can order every single month. And every single month, we will actually send them those cases. But then about 6 years ago, my husband and I realized that we were not eliminating trash bags. We were giving hope and we were giving dignity for these children on their first night. But that trash bag was still being used to carry their stuff around. So we went to Briggs and Riley, which is the leading luxury luggage brand, and I was able to get them to design this bag for me. This is a 32-inch duffel bag. It retails for roughly about $139. I get them for $10 a piece. And so we have a program called the Bag Buster program where people sign up for $10 a month, and I'm able to take a trash bag and use it as what it's supposed to be used for and give a child a Comfort XL. And we have probably given out about 125,000 of these.
The the system that you talk about, I mean, obviously what is important here are the children, the lives that are part of this. You have focused on a very visible element of that system. The trash bag, the duffel bag that is the replacement, the backpack that is the replacement, the sense of transferring is a symbol of value to the kids. Could you talk a little bit about the stories that those bags represent in working to make a difference? Because I'm both moved by the stories of the children and fascinated by the success of comfort cases, right? I mean, there's all kinds of people out there doing really important things, and for good causes. They may not have the story to scale up in order to have the impact that they hope to have. You seem to be doing awfully well on that front. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know what? I will tell you, each and every one of us have a story, each and every one of us. And I remind kids in foster care all the time that by telling their story is how we become more normalized. The thing is that within our organization, these are not foster children. These are children who are experiencing foster care. They are children who are experiencing foster care. And I'm a true believer that when you educate your community, and again, your community is not your zip code, your community is our human race. When you educate your human race of a problem, they will come and solve it. And if you pick that low hanging fruit from that tree will grow so much taller. I'm so lucky that I get to travel the country and I get to meet so many kids in our foster care system. And I get the same question asked every single place I go. They say, Mr. Rob, why? I say, why what? They said, why would somebody give me all this new stuff? And I remind them, as I remind every single person who watches this, you do not have to know someone to love someone. You don't. You don't have to know them to love them. And children in foster care, they don't belong to you. They don't belong to me. They belong to us, to us. And they deserve to be loved.
That's powerful. The ability to get people into that space, to where they care, comes from being able to tell a story in a way that they understand, that they feel. So it hits them both in the head and the heart, right? And to do that, there has to be an awful lot of single-minded focus on the message, right?
Yeah.
That is something that's very hard when one is going it alone. And so, one element of your story that I think is so interesting, one of the many, is that you talk about how you and your husband have focused on the mission of this. Now you are employed, I assume, by Comfort Cases at some level, and he is supportive. There are many people, especially in Rotary, who want to devote time, but might feel a certain kind of tension between the things they want to do in service and responsibilities they have to their families. That's something that I think a lot of people who might listen to this podcast or watch this video might kind of be in the headspace of. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of conversations you had with your husband about
Sure.
making this move?
Yeah, well, first of all, as I said, I was a banker for 28 years. I was a CEO. I come from the .com world. We're takers. And knowing to go into a .org world where we were givers, was not an easy thing to do. And let me explain. Number one, my husband gave up his career 16 years ago, after receiving his master's to stay home and raise our children. And that is the hardest job in the world. So when I came home after Derek Jeter had published my memoir and told me that I was going on a book tour, I said to my husband that I really wanted to go on this book tour. And my husband looked at me and he says, "You do realize you are the breadwinner of this family." And I looked at him and I said, I said, "I have a calling." And I realized it. The job is no longer important to me. The passion is what. And that's what I wanted, was purpose within my day. And yeah, maybe my kids don't go on those fancy vacations like we used to, and we don't drive those expensive cars like we used to. I did make sure they had enough college funds all in the bank though. But you know what? The thing is that my job as a public speaker, my job as an author, is more gratifying than any amount of money that was in my bank account. And I tell people all the time that come to me and they said, "How did you take that first step?" I said, "I put my foot in front of another one and another one. And at every time, and by the way, there are times that you fall, and every single one of us fall. The difference is, do you get up? Do you get up? And even the times when people would say no for funding, or, they wouldn't hire me to do a public speaking engagement, I just went to the next person and just to the next person, because there is people out there that want to help. We have grown this organization in my conference room to now we are a $6.6 million organization. And by the way, we take no federal dollars, we take no state dollars, and the majority of the people who donate are $8 a person. And we have been able to grow it that big.
I love the sense that scale is possible for doing good, right? I believe that our speakers, by and large, kind of share that vision. I mean, it's not an accident nor random, of course. Um, but looking at your company and building it to be the size. I mean, obviously, you had a lot of practice being in the private sector as long as you did. Are there particular lessons you had while you were a CEO that you were able to transfer to this .org piece of your life?
You know what? I tell people this. I get asked this question, by the way, quite a bit. And I do tell the people all the time, I run our organization like I ran my business. Okay. No different. Every single dollar counts. When you donate a dollar, it is my responsibility as a leader to make sure that every single part of that dollar goes to as much of that mission as possible. And that's why when people look at our 990s, they are blown away because they're like, "How can he do this?" And I remind people again, It's all about your community. I have a 3 month waiting list most times for volunteers to come into our center. If you look on my dry erase board, I have already am booking up for 2026 for people to want to do packing parties or to hear me speak. The thing is that you've just got to keep going. You just got to keep going. And even though there are days, I will have to tell you, last year I spent 189 nights in hotels as a public speaker. That's a lot. That's a lot, especially when you're a dad of five. But you know what? I'm married to a saint. I'm married to a saint. And the reason for that is he has the same passion I do, is to make sure our children look at their dads and say, guess what? My dads just didn't talk about it. They actually did it. And we've been able to do things like we've been able to have laws passed in states where trash bags are no longer allowed, where bills are crossing over governors' desks. I'm next week, I'm at the governor of Maryland's house, to celebrate the bill that was passed where there is no longer allowed to give a child in foster care a trash bag. That's where I'm working on now.
So awesome. The idea that we've got like a 3 month waiting list on this suggests to me that there is a capacity challenge that you have as well, right? So what are the challenges, in operating in as large a space? I mean, the United States is huge, right? I understand that if you've done 265,000 backpacks and 50,000 of them are in California, it says something about homelessness in California, right? What is it that Comfort Cases most needs in order to be able to continue to scale up the work that you do?
Well, I mean, it's as clear as day for any nonprofit in today's, climate, and that's funds. That's funds. Whether it's $5 or $10, I remind people all the time, one penny adds up to two pennies. It doesn't matter how much you give, it's just the fact that you can give. So funds are always the thing for us because, we pay for our own shipping. We don't have large corporate sponsors. So, literally, I have three volunteers. We call them the pajama ladies, and they literally sit online and they purchase pajamas after pajamas after pajamas after pajamas. And so that's a lot. But guess what? In 2021, I realized that it was time for us not to slow down. So what did we do? We went to the UK, and my husband and I and my family, and we opened up a center in the UK where we actually serve 84,000 children in the United Kingdom. And we just got approved 2 weeks ago for our Canadian license, where we will be going to Canada and opening up a center there. Because foster care is the same thing in Canada and the UK as it is here in the United States.
That thing of not having corporate sponsors. Um, I'd
And
like
by the
you.
way, let's get this clear. It's not that I don't want them. It's not that I don't want them. Foster care is not warm and fuzzy. It's not warm and fuzzy. If you look at the facts of where money is being driven, we give more money to these pet commercials, these dogs who are in than we do children in foster care. Seriously, it's not warm and fuzzy. When have you ever in your lifetime have you ever seen a first lady ever take up foster care as her platform?
Hmm. The My guess is that with the power of your story, it's only a matter of time.
I sure do hope so, my friend. I
Uh,
sure do hope so.
well, I'll tell you what. We're about at that point where we're going to wind down. For all of the folks who are watching this video or listening to this podcast, several things you ought to know. First of all, there is information about how to learn more. You can always click on the links. We have the comfortcases.org link, which you can either remember or click on our club page, our YouTube page, or our podcast channel pages. Feel free to do so. You should also remember that these stories are certainly effective for perhaps getting you to act. They are all the more effective if you will share these stories with others, and make that a part of your conversation. When you get together with your friends, talk about the stories that you hear. Talk about the things that inspire you. That's a lot more fun than talking about the doom and gloom that the news and aspects of government around the world, tend to feed us. So I would welcome your using what we provide to find inspiration for being of service to others as well. And then finally, if you are on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page, please leave a little note. You can say, hey, I really enjoyed the program. Hey, I've experienced, the opportunity of helping, foster kids or kids experiencing foster care. I was one of those kids. Whatever it might be, the stories themselves in conversation become all the more powerful. So we hope you will take advantage of that. If you ever are telling someone about how to get to these stories, the easy way to do it is just let them know. Rotary.cool. That'll get you there, which is a great way to make it happen. But as great as that is, we like to leave the great words at the end of these recordings to our speakers. And so, Rob, as we always like to do, we hand it back to you so that you can have that thing in people's heads as they finish the video or the podcast, and they get set to go talk to people about what they've just seen or heard.
Well, I definitely have something I want to say, but first of all, I want to say thank you. I've been very honored to receive the Paul Harris Award. I have been very honored to be recognized by so many amazing Rotarians, and I just want to say thank you. But what I want to leave each and every one of you with something that Nelson Mandela said to all of us. We as a society are judged by the way we treat our children. Think about that. We as a society are judged by the way we treat our children. And please remember, kids in foster care, they don't belong to you. They don't belong to me. They belong to us. And they deserve to be treated better. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you all, and we will see you next week.